There is a strange, quiet wound that never truly heals, one you carry without a limp, without a scar the world can see. It is the deep, cold lesson you learned long ago, that your need is a burden, that your outstretched hand will be met only by air, or, worse, by a turning back. This is the secret language of the person who stands in the rain, shivering, yet refuses to knock on the door. They don't ask for help because they are strong. They don't ask for help because they have forgotten how to need. And forgetting how to need is a tragedy. It's an exhaustion that lives not in the muscles, but in the soul. You are the architect of your own silence, the one who carries the weight of everyone else's fragility, but never allows your own foundation to tremble. You might call it self-reliance. You might call it strength. But what if the profound inability to simply say, "I need help," isn't a sign of your greatness, but the shadow of a deeply rational fear? What if the real strength is not in carrying the stone alone, but in knowing when to finally let it go? You exist in a state of perpetual, quiet anticipation. The moment of crisis comes, and your first instinct is not to call out, but to pivot, to plan, to contain the chaos before anyone can witness it. You become the solution, the rock, the unbroken line. But behind the shield of competence, a small, weary voice repeats an old, familiar phrase. I must fix this because no one is coming. You see others lean on their partners, their friends, their family, and a cold knot forms in your stomach. It feels risky to expose that raw, vulnerable core, to admit you are finite, that you are reaching your limit. Feels like stepping off a cliff. So you develop the reflexes of a predator, constantly scanning for danger, constantly working 2 steps ahead to prevent the need from ever arising. You are exhausted, not by what you are doing, but by what you are preventing. This creates a kind of psychic loneliness. You can be surrounded by love, yet feel miles away, because you are holding the only piece of your life that you deem unshareable, your own vulnerability. The burden is not the problem itself, but the requirement that you must appear untouched by the problem. But what if that feeling of being perpetually self-sufficient is actually a perfect memory of a time when you truly had no other choice? This is not a character flaw. This is a survival strategy forged in the soft, formative years. Think back, not necessarily to a moment of grand tragedy, but to 1,000 micro moments, the small hurts that went unseen, the soft pleas that were met with a shrug, or worse, with impatience. Maybe you cried and were told to be a big boy or girl, essentially learning that distress is inconvenient. Maybe you sought comfort and were given a solution, but no true empathy, learning that your feelings don't matter as much as the solution. Or maybe, and this is the most profound cut, you asked for help and were actively disappointed or betrayed. The person you leaned on dropped you. For the young mind, these instances translate into a single ironclad rule: need equals pain. If you are always the one providing, always the pillar, you control the relational exchange. You become invulnerable to the pain of rejection because you never offer the opportunity for it. You create a fortress around your softest parts. The silent request becomes, I will not ask, so I cannot be denied. The ultimate irony is that this self-reliance, born from a need for safety, becomes the very thing that isolates you in your present adult life. You've trained everyone around you to believe you are a machine, immune to gravity, immune to struggle. And so, when the ground beneath you cracks, no one rushes to catch you because they never learned that you could fall. Is it possible that the deepest loneliness is simply the feeling of never being seen by those who matter most? Imagine a stone, perfectly smooth, lying at the bottom of a fast-moving river. This stone was once a sharp, jagged rock, full of soft edges and tiny fissures. But every time it reached out, every time it let the rushing water carry it, every time it allowed another passing stone to knock into it, it was hurt. Its edges were broken further. Its needs were met with the violent indifference of the current. Eventually, the stone learned. It stopped moving. It sank into the coldest, stillest part of the riverbed, letting the sediment pile around it. It became perfectly round and hard. No new damage could touch it. It became an island in the current. Years passed. The river flowed on, life blooming all around. The other stones, imperfect and jagged, were carried downstream, rolling and bumping, creating new landscapes, changing and growing with the current. But the perfectly smooth, self-reliant stone remained in its spot, cold, unmoving, invincible. And one day a fisherman dips his hand into the deepest water and pulls it out. He admires its smooth, polished surface, a true masterpiece of solitude. But as he holds it up to the light, he realizes a quiet, terrifying truth. The stone is not just hard, it is also hollow. It never broke, but in its absolute refusal to be touched, to be moved, to be helped, it never truly lived. It simply endured. The need to ask for help is not a weakness. It is a fundamental human technology. Think of it this way. To let someone else carry your burden for a mile is not about you being weak. It is about giving them the gift of purpose. When you persistently refuse aid, you are not just insulating yourself. You are robbing others of the chance to practice love. You're telling them silently that their capacity for kindness is not necessary for your survival. You are erecting a glass wall between their heart and your need. And in doing so, you diminish your own humanity, which is, by definition, an interconnected experience. The core fear is that asking for help will make you seem less than. But the deepest relationships are built not on shared strengths, but on shared vulnerability. That moment where you finally let the facade drop, where you whisper, "I can't," is often the precise moment that true connection rushes in. The journey home is not about becoming a steel tower that stands alone against the storm. It is about becoming the ancient, deeply rooted tree that allows the smaller creatures to take shelter under its enormous, intertwined branches. The strength is in the network, not the solitary trunk. What if the greatest act of self-love isn't becoming stronger, but finally allowing yourself to be soft? The work, then, is not to become more self-reliant, but to become an honest messenger of your own capacity. It is to realize that the child who was ignored is now the adult who has the power to risk a different outcome, to break the old, cold rule, need equals pain, to gently, slowly begin to replace it with a new truth. Need equals connection. You will feel the fear. The old reflexes will scream at you to pull back, to fix it, to endure. But you must, for the sake of your own soul's expansion, allow the tremor of vulnerability to pass through you. Close your eyes. Remember the weight. And then, remember the river stone. The moment you finally look into the eyes of another person and say, I am struggling, and I need you to just hold the rope for a moment, is not the moment you fall. It is the moment you finally land. The deepest act of self-care is to finally let your guard down and allow a single, perfect shaft of light to fall upon the one part of you that has been silent all this time, the man who forgot how to need.